talk before the break, and we've got Nathan. So, round of applause.
Thank you. So I'm here today to talk about how my company, Zed Industries, is using operation-level version control to unify code, chat, and large language models. That may not mean much yet, but we'll get into what it all means hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll know. So hi, I'm Nathan Sobo, and I am obsessed with text. I've spent most of my career thinking about displaying efficiently and editing and doing everything you can do with text. In 2011, I joined Github to start the Atom Editor project, and I worked on that for many years. And then 2021, 10 years later, two teammates of mine from GitHub that worked on Atom with me, and I started Zed to create a new code editor. I announced our alpha at Gitpod's conference last year, so they're having me back. I got to top that. And yeah, I mean, really we started Zed because we learned so much doing Atom, but we never really achieved our full vision of what we were going for. And so a lot of what this talk is going to be about is what we've been trying to build, and I think we're finally going to be able to build this time around. Even though I worked at GitHub for like 9 years or something, I have to admit that I really don't enjoy pull requests. I don't really mind writing them too much, but I hate reviewing them. But conversely, I love talking about code. So like, what's the issue here? But I think the pull request that I want to review a lot of times is one that I already have a ton of context on. Like if I'm getting a pull request that's out of nowhere, and I've got to make sense from a little markdown in the body and a big diff of what's going on, like I'm gonna have a bad day. But if from the beginning of the development of whatever code I'm reviewing, I've been in a conversation with the person developing it, I understand what their goals are, we've discussed alternatives. If a lot of that's happened sort of upfront and during the process of that pull request being written, now I'm in a much better position to review it. But the tools for doing that kind of suck. Like, if I'm not talking to you on a diff and a pull request, how am I talking to you about code? Am I like pasting code into Slack? Am I like hopping on a screen sharing call and like trying to dictate, oh no, go open that file over here. And so I've always been frustrated with sort of all the parts of the conversation that weren't kind of at the very end when the person's got a diff ready to be reviewed. I mean, I know they can push additional edits to their diff and stuff, but there's still all this part of the conversation that just felt left out to me, and that's what I've always wanted. Yeah, so really what I've always wanted is just to have a conversation linked to code, not to commits, not to diffs, but just to the actual code, like right in the editor. As I'm working, I want to be able to be coding along, highlight some code, hit a key binding, mention somebody, start a conversation, mention some other spots in the code, and then later, when I'm looking at the code, be able to find that conversation. It feels like a simple thing, and I even looked at GitHub of like, can we like make comments on things that aren't in a diff? But it's hard because like everything's hung on these version control artifacts. And so that's really what we're trying to achieve with Zed. It's a code editor, but the only reason that we're building a code editor is that we believe a code editor, like actually where you're writing the code, is the right place to be collaborating in your code as well, having conversations about it. So what we already support in the product today is just real-time multiplayer editing. So you can add contacts, you can click a little icon in the upper right of the workspace and pull people in, and everybody's got a cursor and you can work together. I mean, that was sort of the first step of this. But now we're in the process of taking this further. And really our goal is to build sort of our ideal software collaboration experience. Cover the rest of that conversation gap that I was talking about, really feeling missing from GitHub. And I want to be clear that a lot of the stuff I'm presenting here is still kind of in the development stage, the vision stage. So like, graphics I'm showing you are mock-ups, I just want to be clear. But I think we're pretty far into getting the like foundational underpinnings of this stuff in place in terms of the actual underlying algorithms, data structures that need to be there. So yeah, but I decided I wanted to share this because this is what I'm excited about right now, and I don't really want to talk about anything I'm not excited about, so vaporware it is. So our vision for how things are going to work is you're going to have these tree of channels inside your editor. And so you can see here that like I open up this panel, it shares real estate with the project browser. And I've just got this tree of channels on the left, kind of like Slack, honestly. And they nest and I can click into one. And what we're envisioning is kind of oftentimes the first conversation that you might end up having in one of these channels is actually going to be with a language model. And the reason for that is that I think what you're going to do is you're going to kind of come in there and sort of dump some thoughts, just like boom. And what the model does, at least in my workflow, is it kind of takes a bunch of scattered thoughts that I wrote really fast and not fit for like easy human consumption and digest them until this is like what I'm looking for, is to kind of go back and forth with the model, develop an idea. Now the model's got it in its context window and it's in a position to spit it back out. But then the next step, I think, and these can happen in any order, but often is like once I've kind of clarified my idea, now I pull in my teammates. So I ask the language model in this example, or I could just mention them directly. We're kind of getting whimsical with this idea here, but hey, like pull these people in, and so someone comes in, and then the cool thing in this post language model era is like, as soon as someone gets mentioned and pulled into the conversation, the model can produce a summary that's appropriate to their needs instead of them just kind of scrolling back from the back scroll to get context on it. So far I haven't really showed anything though about code. Like, okay, great, you've reinvented Slack and you put it inside a code editor, like, and maybe there's some language model magic on top, but like, what was really gonna make this happen? And so for that, we're going to introduce this feature. I think this is the key feature to making conversations about code more fluid, called portals. And so the idea behind a portal is that you can see this conversation is running here. But this piece of code is not like a fenced code block. It's not like copied and pasted. It's actually like a portal to another document. And it's showing sort of a live editable excerpt out of that file that I can travel through it and go into that document. If someone's editing that document, I'll see those edits show up here, and I can edit it here as well. So there's a linkage. And as that document is changing, the link remains stable. It's durable in the face of change. So it's not like that case where you like link to somebody on GitHub to a particular commit, and then you like make some changes and push more code, and now that commits out of date. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but this is a durable link. And so if I click on that, or hit a key binding or something, it'll pull up the code right next to it, and now I have that piece of the conversation in context. And another cool idea is you can travel through these portals bidirectionally. So here I am in the code, you can see in the gutter over there, there's a little indicator that a conversation is happening. And we want to play with like color, like there's one down there where maybe that was a conversation, but it's less recent or less relevant. Anyway, you can hover over that, you see a little outtake from the particular conversation. I can click it, and boom, I'm right there in context where the conversation was originally happening. So in my mind, like, this is the experience that I want. It's more fluid and free-flowing. Like, I can just have a conversation about code in the code. It's pretty simple. And it turns out, interestingly enough, that like some of these ideas have their, I'd always heard about this guy, Douglas Engelbart, and this thing, the mother of all demos, which was like I heard this guy invented the mouse, or he invented desktop computing or something. But when I actually watched the demo last year, like I was blown away because like what Engelbart was actually trying to create was a real-time collaborative text editing platform, but like just on a mainframe computer. Like that was what his goal was. But what everyone took from it was like the mouse and video displays and all the other technologies that he created. But he was actually trying to build this collaborative text editing environment. And then this guy, Ted Nelson, he coined the term hypertext. And his idea of how links would work, actually Michaela sitting right there made me aware of this. He called what we call portals, which I think is just like I like the term. He called those things transclusions. And he invented the term hypertext in like 1962 or something, like in the early 60s. And this was his vision. Here's like an outtake from this paper he wrote in the 60s that was itself hypertext, but done like choose your own adventure style. But this is what he envisioned, is this ability to kind of like embed these live subsets of documents. And you can imagine this as like compositional as well. Like, documents can include each other even in these weird cycles. Like that's what we want to achieve and make happen. Neither of these guys wasn't entirely their own fault, like shipped their vision. Like Xanadu, the Ted Nelson's project, there's this quote I found on the internet, it was like the greatest piece of vaporware ever created or something like that. So it didn't happen. And I think they were just kind of before their time. But I think we're now at a point where we can actually deliver on some of these ideas. So one thing I will say is like Git was not designed to solve the kinds of problems that I'm talking about here. And the main reason is I'm trying to show this Venn diagram is there are a lot of things in the Git model, right? There's the repository, there's the commits, there's the branches. Those are all the shared abstractions that everyone using Git has a common understanding of on the repo. But notably, like the actual files that you're editing, your working copy, are completely outside of the shared environment in Git. And so to make these ideas happen, what we want to do is extend that abstraction beyond the core DAG of commits and branches and stuff to include the working copy that people are actually working with on a keystroke operation by operation level. We've already built, we call it CRDB because it's we're using the ideas from CRDTs, conflict-free replicated data types, which we're already using to do collaborative editing really successfully, kind of at the individual buffer level. So what we're attempting now is to zoom that out and go bigger, go to the entire repository and also include versioning of these conversations we're talking about, and then kind of a consistent addressing scheme for all of it so that you can link to something. We have every version of every, like even if you haven't saved the file to disk, I still want you to be able to like link to the half-written code you're writing. I don't want you to think about, is it committed, what branch is it on, if I pushed it, none of that should matter. And so to do that, I think we can capture basically every keystroke in this crazy CRDB. And lastly, I just want to say, I think there's huge implications with the introduction of language models. I mean, in 2021, well, really, we wanted to do this for years. But when we started the company, language models weren't really on my radar, to be honest. I just wanted people to talk to each other about code more effectively. But now as I some coding sessions I've had talking to GPT-4, and I'm in this dialogue with the model that leads to the generation of code. To me, more and more code is actually, because of the best way to interface with this new technology is kind of in this conversational format. The linking of code and conversation in a very sophisticated, trackable, rich way is going to be even more important than I already thought it was just when people were involved. Now we have the model involved. We're going to need to have the model spit out some code. We incorporate it into our project with a portal then we make edits. We need to know that those edits have been made so that we can train the model to generate code more like the one that we edited to. So just tracking all this change in a fine-grained way, finer grained than just commits alone would allow, I think is going to be really important. Oh, one thing I should note is we definitely plan to interoperate with Git. There's nothing that we are doing here that isn't compatible with Git. It's just sort of extending the umbrella to those finer grained states. And then, one more thing is, we haven't really talked about this yet, but we decided that we're gonna open source Zed on our own platform. So it'll be the first thing that's open source. And I don't know when it's gonna be, but we're gonna get there. And yeah, I just thought that URL would be funny. Zed:// that opens it in the editor. Zed, that's the domain, Zed's the company, Zed's the app. Yeah, there's like 4 Zeds in that URL. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So I like that you covered some of those ideas in the presentation. Nicely done. One other literature references might be the Andrew projects, right, in the 90s, where they had these embedded Portal-like editors. I remember myself writing with 500 people on the same source code file, so it might be a thing to look up. But one question I have when I saw your mockups and so on, could you envision this as a VS Code extension?
Yeah, I mean, actually, potentially, yes. I mean, I don't like VS Code. I just don't enjoy using it. So, I probably wouldn't write it. But if we're open source, I think that, people could probably take the core, CRDB piece and adapt it if that were something people wanted to do. So it does seem doable, yeah. But my crusade of building the perfect editor wouldn't allow me to just try to build a VS Code extension.
Do you focus on Atom then?
What?
What is the basic default Atom?
Oh, Zed is actually an editor. You can download it right now. So it's written in Rust. Yeah, maybe I should have given a little more context on that. So yeah, Zed is a code editor, and it's right now Mac only native code editor. But we basically wrote our own UI framework. Went nuts. Warp, they use the same framework because I joined them briefly, and then realized I wanted to start my own thing. But yeah, so Metal. Yeah, we write Metal graphics code right to the. I'm getting a little incoherent, but basically, it's a code editor. It's not as feature rich as VS Code yet because it's newer, but it's a hell of a lot faster.
We're in beta.
Yeah, we're in beta.
Download it now.
Hey.
Other questions?
Do you see text as the way to go today, or do you think it's just better than an audio, video for the courses and stuff? The correlation.
Yeah, it's a really good question. To me, text is I wouldn't say it's the only, but I guess why I've been so fascinated with it is it's kind of like the universal human interface, the original kind of human information system interface. So, and it's just really cool that it's become kind of so much more important with the advent of these models who their primary data type is just a stream of these tokens. Yeah.
I have a question, how do you follow the evolution of coding as code gets refactored or maybe just doesn't exist anymore? How do these portals maybe go back and still get this is code, how does that transition evolve?
Yeah, so the way that I didn't want to get too into the weeds in the talk, but basically we maintain this B tree of every piece of text that's ever been inserted that's just growing monotonically over time. And so when you delete something, it's kind of when you set deleted at in the database, we just hide it. And we're using these persistent structures so that we can create snapshots going back in time. So right now it's working in memory. We haven't gotten it to the point where we're writing it to disk, but it should be doable to be sure. And basically, we have a database basically of every operation that's occurred, which sounds like a lot, but it's just text. So like, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
One question.
I was wondering for open source with Zed, or is that like you're waiting until you have cross-platform and all this other stuff before that? Or is that something you're thinking about doing sooner?
We just want to open source it on our own platform. Like that just sounds more meaningful and fun to me than just putting it on GitHub. Like I don't really even like using GitHub that much. I don't know.
I meant like, are you waiting like?
We want to do this ASAP, but we want to do it on our own platform. So that's going to create some delay because we're trying to figure this stuff out. But then I think we're good to go. Yeah.
So you mentioned that, like, you don't want to expose like the individual developers like all these weird Git shenanigans to like collaborate. Like, how much further do you see that going in like, other parts of like the development life cycle of like there's so much crappy stuff on top of Git. And, like, do you see like other parts of like the software development life cycle that you'll see being kind of pulled off or abstracted away from the actual version control system that's being used?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think I've thought that much about things downstream from just like having a conversation around the code and interweaving language model conversations. I mean, I think the ability to create these things we call anchors, which are like logically persistent. Like if I basically create an anchor on a word, it will still be on that word if that word exists 10,000 edits later or whatever, right? That I think may have broader applicability of like being able to annotate stuff. Basically having kind of this like annotation layer on top of the code that isn't like, you don't have to insert code, but you can kind of add stuff that is tracked effectively. But we really want to interoperate with Git because like I don't think we're going to be able to sell people on like, come use our new version control system because so much hangs on with Git. You got to build CI, you got to like pull requests are fine as well. Like there are people have workflows built around that. So what we want to do is, I mean, there was a time on GitHub when every GitHub repo was a subversion repo. So there's precedent for it, I think. And hopefully you shouldn't know that we're building this crazy operational tree under the hood. Like you just open your editor, and if something's been edited in Zed and someone's commented on it, we're doing a good enough job tracking what's happened to like recover that effectively. That's the goal. Yeah.
Awesome. Final question.
Yeah.
Hey, awesome.
Thanks.
If you were to serialize this information in this context, like out of Zed, how do you think you would do it? Would it like you just dump it in the HTML file or something like that? Or would you actually try and like create Zed files and Git, put it in the same repo or different repo? Like, what's your best thinking on that? And maybe the context is like, if you're trying to feed information into an LLM being generated code, you can kind of look for function calls, Brian said, and a few relevant things in the small conversations that you have, but like this stuff would actually be much more instructive than like function chaining or something. So like, how would
like what is the serialized representation of this kind of hyper-textual graph?
Yeah, and it's where maybe I'm using Zed, but my teammates are not using it, and we all do this stuff, generate code skills. How would you think that, basically?
I don't know. Sorry, it's not a good answer. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have like a kind of a binary format for it as our plan, where we're storing it in, we're thinking about using LMDB as our like database backend, and we have this B trees of like inserted fragments basically, and the repos kind of like got this mix of sort of deleted and alive data that's growing over time, basically. But how do we serialize that to a format that, I don't know, I haven't thought that through.
Like that.
Huh?
Like that.
Yeah, but I mean, how do we indicate something's a portal? Yeah, like, there's still a lot to work out, but hopefully soon you'll see a real working version of this, and we won't fall down the fate of Ted Nelson and Xanadu. But I think we have a pretty good plan, which is why I had the temerity to stand here and talk about it. So anyway, thanks everybody for your attention.
Thank you.